I'm still doing silly voices now to this day. How about you, sir?
Actually, I'm completely opposite. You obviously were grabbing the comedy vein from early and went with it all the way through. I've always been a bit of a, I suppose what we call it is a heavy, always like the serious drama. I can't think of anybody who actually was, if you like, somebody who, oh, I've got to follow that person, but an actor who I always loved on screen because he had a great presence and a kind of a great weight. He was a hero character for me in a lot of things. Was Robert Mitchum. I don't know if you guys remember him because it's a long time back. But that was an actor that always made an impression on me as a young person.
In terms of names, I mean, it's not a big name, but there's a guy called Donald Sumter that you as Game of Thrones fans might recognise as Mr. Louis. I spent a couple of days with Donald, and looking at his CV, it goes back to the mid-60s. He's been in everything, but he's still down to earth, a normal guy. He's not looking for fame, he just wants to create characters and be an actor. And I've got the greatest respect for actors who do that.
I certainly might be going after the next season, but what about the Star Wars show?
Whether it's an actor or not, you have other career aspirations.
No, I actually don't have somebody in mind at the moment where I think, oh God, I've got to work with them. But I did have the good fortune, I was in Ken Brown's Hamlet, and I did have the good fortune in the early scenes of that. I played a relatively minor part called Bernardo, who was one of the guards on the walls in the early part of the film. But Marcellus, who's another not major part in the whole story, was played by Jack Lemmon. Because Ken Brown, as you probably know if you see films that he does, is very good at populating them with very well-known names, even in lesser parts. So you had Jack Lemmon on that, and I've always been a huge fan of Jack Lemmon. And it was a real thrill to think, oh my God, all my scenes that I'm doing here, pretty well all of them, I'm doing with Jack Lemmon. And I remember, I actually said to him, my kids were quite young at the time, and I did with him something I've never done before, because if you're an actor, you can't really spend your time going around being overawed by fellow actors, because at the end of the day, you're all working together, and what you got to do is get on with the job. But I remember saying to him, and it's the only time I've ever done it, Jack, I would love you to, could I video you talking to my wife and kids, because the kids were quite young. And he said, yeah, sure. And he did it. So I have got a video at home with Jack Lemmon saying hello to my wife and kids, which I'm really quite chuffed about.
Yeah, it's very good. I was very talking not just comedy, but I was very influenced and very taken over by American film stars. I'd say a particular hero of mine was James Stewart. I'd love to have worked with him, I'd say. And talking of voices, I was sort of copying people. So at one time I did a fair impression of Jimmy Stewart. I remember a film he did called The Flight of the Phoenix. And he was arguing with Hardy Kruger about how to put an aeroplane together to fly out of the desert. And he had one line I remember, which was, "Listen, mister, I remember a time when we used to take a real pride in just getting there." And so I impersonated, another big hero of mine was Marlon Brando, and of course The Godfather. And you're going to have to employ more of our people. You never invite me around for a cup of coffee. And I'm lucky enough to work in America in 1980, 79, 80, and I used the same dressing room as Marlon Brando used in Boston, in Wilbur Theatre, and it's just the biggest thrill of my life, I have to say. Lots of people. I don't know, Spencer Tracy, Walter Matthau is another one I'd love to work with. I mean, these names, all names from the past, but then I am very old. That's so there we are. Anyway, over to you. I can go on for the next half hour about this.
You know, there's a saying that you should never meet your heroes. And there's a couple of people that I'm not going to name that I'm really not that impressed that I worked with. Because they particularly weren't very nice people. you know, behind the scenes when the cameras aren't rolling, they revert to their own personalities and they're not actually that very nice at all. In terms of the lovely people I've worked with, Michael Caine is an absolute star to work with. Helen Mirren is again fantastic to work with, and yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say on that. Whether we're actors or not, we're still real people when the cameras don't turn. So, no, Elvis Presley before my time.
All right. How do you feel is the most effective way that you prepare for your roles?
You know, there's all sorts of things you can do, and some people kind of are very, very intense with it. I mean, for instance, Dan Day-Lewis does very substantial prep, goes into his character weeks before filming starts, stays in it 24/7, day and night, week after week, until he's completed the entire shoot. And it obviously works for him. He's had great success. Personally, it wouldn't be my cup of tea. It would do my head in. You know, I have to, you know, be there when I need to be there and get the hell out of there when I get the hell out of there. I think people underestimate sometimes the benefits and the value of something as simple as costume. Once you put on, you know, a sort of a breastplate of armor and a gold skirt, made out of, you know, heavy, well, gold, brass, whatever, you know, and don a sword and get a look at yourself in the mirror wearing this gear. I mean, you guys who do cosplay will know this. Once you put that on, you start to get a whole different sense of self. It does inform you as to how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you relate to other people, the knowledge of your status in the world in which you're playing your character kind of defines for you very clearly, you know, just things that kind of need to be there. So it's really, I guess, just sort of thinking yourself into what is that world, where does that character stand in that world, who does he connect with, who does he not connect with, and as I say, having that sense of self from the costume, perhaps also from the environment that you're placed in. It's a huge plus, you know, it starts to fall into place.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Actually, I'm, I think, a bit more of a surface skater than that, really. I sort of, being basically an impressionist, I mean, I've done a lot of work over the years in theatre, in repertory and so on, but my instinct is to do a sort of a surface impression straight away. But actually, as it's gone on, I've learned that that's the first stage, and there's a lot more underneath that as well. And talking about the costume, reminds me of the only time I've ever put a frock on. This is a frightening thought in itself, isn't it? But I was playing an ugly sister in a pantomime. You see, they've always wanted to do it. They've all wanted to put a frock on, you know. They laugh at, you know. So I did an ugly sister, and I found it pretty difficult actually wearing a dress, I have to say. And then somebody came up and said, you know, you remind me of your mother. And that was it for me. I never put this dress on since. So I'd obviously picked up all her characteristics and remembered them, and put all her worst characteristics into it. But no, it is, in my case, a lot of it's to do how they speak. But then, to me, secondary is the costume and so on, the way they walk and so on. And actually, the last thing in the world that I get to is attitudes towards other characters, where they're coming from, you know, how they live, what is their day-to-day life, you know. But then I very rarely get roles that are long enough to necessitate this sort of research, I have to say. Here we are.
Well, I, like Ian, tend to play thugs and bad guys in more dramatic roles. A lot of the time when you go through the audition process, you get the script maybe 2 or 3 days beforehand, but a lot of the time you walk into the casting suite and you're given the script there and then. And you have to make it up pretty quickly, because you're on camera within seconds of getting a script. So a lot of the time you'll wing it and see what works. If you get cast, you tend to replay what you did at the casting as the character develops because they like that. That's why you got cast in the first place. And that tends to be the way the characters that I play tend to develop. It's almost like an on the spur of the moment thing that's done within seconds of the cameras rolling at a casting.
Next. All right, what has been your favorite role, and what is your favorite element that you embody in that character? Favorite role and favorite characteristic that you embody in that character.
No, I'll tell you what's difficult about that is that, you know, most people, insofar as they know us, will know us from screen. If I were to answer that as honestly I could, I'd probably have to answer it from a theatre world, because I do quite a lot of theatre. And theatre, you know, you get very engaged, obviously, in the whole process because you have very intensive rehearsal time, and so I'd probably be more inclined to sort of like think about it from within that world. But there's something about, I mean, on film, it's quite nice always to play characters that have, for me at any rate, I quite like playing characters that have weight. And what I mean by weight is that somehow or another they've real presence, they've got a certain gravitas, and they feel bigger than you feel. Somehow they make you feel just bigger. Now, anything like a sort of a commander of the King's Guard obviously falls into that category. But recently, I played a character on Ripper Street, who is the father of Mariana Björling's character, who arrives from America, obviously has a whole history, not just with his daughter, but with his daughter's intended, and of course they're having their difficulties anyway. But this guy is, I'm going to say it, and pardon me if anybody's offended, one bad bastard. He really is. And I love playing him simply because he's the complete inverse of the character in Game of Thrones. I mean, Barristan is one of the few good guys. Theodore in Ripper Street is evil, evil, evil as get out. And I tell you, and he has a huge presence as well, because he seems to expect that everything should go his way, and if it doesn't, he has a bunch of Pinkertons behind him to help him ensure that it does. But it's great playing a character that just has that much sense of awareness about himself, and who believes that anything he wants he can achieve. So that was fun to do.
I'm what is known as a character actor. A lot of the characters I play are on set 1, maybe 2 days maximum. If you watch Harry Brown, I'm on set for 2 days and I'm on screen for 2 scenes. One filmed one day and one filmed the night of the following night. My character has to be instantly disliked, and I had exactly 30 seconds to be that disliked. And when you're given a challenge, if you've got 30 seconds, make the audience hate you. I love that sort of thing. It's great fun because I mean, if anybody's seen the scene in Harry Brown, you probably don't, well, you will remember it if you've seen the film. I had literally 2 scenes and 30 seconds to be universally hated. So when I then got killed in the next scene, nobody was sympathizing with my position at all. And those are great roles.
No, I do remember you in Harry Brown. I was very glad that when you came to a sticky end. What a horrible man, yes. Yes, well, in my case, the first thing I ever saw as a child was Peter Pan, and it really put the hook in me. Get it? Get it? See, that comedy is always bubbling under the surface. No, but I did fall in love with Captain Hook, and I wanted to be Captain Hook. because I loved his bravura, and I loved the fact that he was so horrible to everybody and got away with it. He had terrific charm. It took me about 50 years to get to play him, but I did. I've done him about 4 or 5 times. I guess one of my favourite ever parts, really. It just sums up the theatre to me, because that's what I first fell in love with. As I say, this, and it was just so full of colour and so full of whiz and bang and so on. That's why I enjoy doing a pantomime every year, because those are the it's the closest to variety, the closest thing you get to true theatre, to my mind. There's left these days, which is so much concerned with screen stuff. But on the screen, I played a lot of very heavy parts, you know, because I'm so tall, dark, and handsome. I played a lot of policemen and a lot of not quite as heavy as your characters, but quite heavy because of this dark face I've got. So a great thrill for me is to play sympathetic characters, and I'm doing episodes of Benidorm at the moment. I don't know if anybody watches Benidorm, but great fun, seaside postcard stuff. But this guy's a bit of a loser, but he's quite sensitive, and he's totally in love, and it's really great to play a sort of puppy in love, you know, sort of really sort of desperate, and he's getting nothing back at all, and it's quite sort of sympathetic. So for me, I really enjoy that, having had a past of quite heavy parts, including the wonderful Boise, of course, who's very unsympathetic. Do you know what I mean? Nobody likes him very much because he's a bit pompous, isn't he? A bit of a snob, you know what I mean? So it's very good for me, but I hope that gives you some sort of an answer.
All right, we have just a couple more. These are a little more specific to Game of Thrones and to your role in Only Fools and Horses. So we'll start with you two, I guess, together. You talked a lot about the dynamics of playing the villain and the hero. I'm sure on and off screen it's very different, but how does that dynamic work on set? Are you in character a lot of the time, you know? When you're off set, are you still fighting with the same characters? Do you still hate Theon?
For those of you who've seen season 2 of Game of Thrones, my character immediately starts butting heads with Theon's character. Alfie behind the scenes is a good mate. We go out drinking together. No. When you come off set, cameras start rolling, you're back in your own character, you're doing what you normally do, you're chatting about what you normally chat about as work colleagues. As soon as the cameras are rolling, of course, you're back into character, you're back doing what you do with each other. In season 7, I think it was, season 2, episode 7, he gives me a damn good kicking. I just want to make for the record that in real life I could take it.
I'm a YouTuber with 3 subscribers and I'm getting all of it.
Generally, Barristan didn't actually have any negative relationships directly with anybody. I guess the only one where, if you like, there was a subliminal tension would have been the relationship with Sir Jorah. You know, I mean, it was always, even in the playing of it, it was subliminal. It was never kind of like a face-to-face standoff, really. Perhaps one time when they were riding through the desert. But generally, it was a fairly sort of like low-level kind of, it's not even hostility, the word would be more just sort of like mistrust. But off the camera, I mean, Ian and I, you know, get on very well, and there's no tensions whatsoever. I mean, in fact, generally on Game of Thrones, I have to say, almost without exception, certainly in my experience, I mean, great cast of people, very easy to work with, no divas, nobody throwing shapes, you know, just a good crowd that you could relate to and get on with. I mean, I think sometimes, I don't quite know why there's this perception of actors as a bunch of lovies and we all need to be cosseted and all the rest. In my experience, actors are among the most generous people I've ever met, and generally very good co-workers, because they have to be. I mean, you do very little where it's you on your own. You're working with a big team of people, and you have to be able to get along. And if you start throwing shapes, it just makes life painful for everybody, you know. And I'm glad to say Game of Thrones, a huge number of people, cast and crew, but generally, I have to say, great atmosphere.
I think this is your question, though. I think you've answered that. No, I think that's a very good answer. Very good. Have you got a question for me? Okay.
So John, what was it like working with Del Boy, as millions know him, David Jason? What was it like?
Well, of course, my character in Only Fools and Horses Boise was really what Del Boy wanted to be. I think what he aspired to. You know, like being taller, for instance. There was always this wonderful physical dichotomy, really, with Del Boy as being quite short and me being quite tall. And so Del Boy was always looking up at... Well, Boise's one of those characters, we all know them. They always seem to have money. They always seem to cruise through life, you know, without too much effort. You don't know how they got there, but probably nefarious activities somewhere. But, you know, they've always got the car, they've always got the house, and they're never short of money. No, obviously, you know, we had to get on. I mean, you're so right. Of course, teamwork is very important in all successful shows, and there's no room for antagonism, really. And that was Only Fools was a great team, and of course it was David's series, and I mean, absolute sort of comedy genius, really. And it's extraordinary to think that actually he wasn't first choice for that role at all. The first person John Sullivan, the writer, wanted was Jim Broadbent, who I think was unavailable or didn't want to do it or something. And extraordinary thing, I think, if it had come on with Jim Broadbent, it would have been very, very different. I can't imagine anyone else than David doing it. But he was a wicked guy. I was doing a very complicated scene where Boise had a scanner which was nicked from Gatwick Airport in his garden for some reason, and he was playing with it, and he had a remote control, but the thing was moving in completely opposite ways. And he had Marlene dressed in leopard skin, of course, with a pram with the baby Tyler in, who was also dressed in leopard skin. It's a miniature version of Marlene. And Duke, the Great Dane, running around the garden barking furiously, and I had all these words to say, so not the easiest thing. So what does David Jason do? He gets a chair and he sits right beside the camera, watching me. So I said, oh, thanks for all your support, David. He said, no, I want to learn at the School of Comedy of John Challis. And he sat there while I was doing this scene, the bugger. So, you know, it was quite a hard school in a lot of ways, quite competitive, but no, terrific, because without him it certainly wouldn't have been the series it was.
Thank you guys very, very much. And everybody, we want to let you know we set up some tables down here, and we are going to have all the guys set up so that you can get photos, you can buy photos and autographs, and visit with the talent. So thank you guys very much.
Sorry, just to say, actually, my table's down that way, where my big photo is, you know. So I should be down there. If anybody wants to see me, I can't imagine anyone wants to come and see me, but please come and see me, because I'll get very lonely down there. But I'll see you later. Thanks. Lots of books on sale, photographs, you name it. Go and see these guys. They're brilliant.
Got the mic. Cheers, John.